Something that goes under the radar is ADHD, and you did an article on this. Can you expand?
Yeah, this is something too that when the neural pathway development, so it was all kind of connected. There was a bit of an underlying theme to this issue. When the development of the neural pathways is impaired, you can result, one of the neurotransmitters is dopamine. It's associated with the reward center in the brain and motivation. So if you don't have enough dopamine in your brain, you sometimes want to seek it in other ways. And that can be because these people get very bored easily. And so I talked to Pete Quilley, who's an ADHD coach in Vancouver. There's two terms. There's attention deficit disorder, ADD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. Sometimes people get confused. What Pete says is it's actually attention deficit disorder with or without hyperactivity. So that's why sometimes you get the H inserted. Often boys are more hyperactive. Girls may have it as well, but there may be less tendency to have the hyperactivity.
Oh.
And so it's really characterized by a dopamine deficiency. And then how do you deal with that? Well, sometimes you can deal with it, by glugging coffee.
That's not very healthy.
Or smoking cigarettes, because you get a nicotine will give you, so going for the stimulants. And the more extreme end, people can become cocaine addicts.
Yeah.
Or they become adrenaline junkies, like they want to do things like I think there's an association between the ADHD and the rise of the extreme sports that you see among the young people.
Wow, very interesting, like bungee jumping and extreme skateboarding.
Then you're not bored. and there's certain people who do this, or really crazy, almost adventure travel into the midst of Africa.
The jungle.
Yeah, and so it's and then sometimes it's treated with drugs, like Dexedrine or Ritalin, which is prescribed. Some people think that there's too much prescribing of drugs for children in the school system, that boys are boys and that it's a product of evolutionary biology. There's a strong genetic component. So it's a fascinating area. It was ADHD Awareness Week in British Columbia. So they had displays in libraries across the province. And I talked to Pete. One of the things, the downside of ADHD is how it manifests itself is one of the things people with it sometimes have lower self-esteem. They may have higher thoughts of suicide. They are more prone to addiction, problems in school, problems concentrating. So, but at the same time, it can actually sometimes serve you well in the field that I'm in, which is journalism. And sometimes people with ADD have a good sense of humor. But so I don't want to make it like just totally pathologize people. In our field, if you're operating with deadlines, so Pete was telling me that like one of the areas where he coaches people, some of them are chefs, that the chefs are, they have to work to deadline.
You have to work under pressure.
Yeah, pressure, juggle lots of tasks. It's not boring being a chef. You got to move, 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 move. So certain occupations have a tendency to attract these types of people. Other occupations, they're not going to survive at all. Anything that's kind of repetitive or boring, accounting, accounting isn't necessarily boring, but you know what I mean, that it's not a task that is fraught with crisis, and that's where they can sometimes thrive.
Yeah, I'm really interested in what you mentioned about the drugs and what are the dangers in prescribing too many drugs or perhaps the incorrect drugs to people with ADHD, especially children.
Yeah, the problem is that people are misdiagnosed with depression, because that can be an outgrowth of ADHD, that they'll be given, the antidepressants are called SSRIs, which are serotonin something reuptake, but they're basically this class of antidepressants which increase your serotonin levels, which can make you happier. But what they have a tendency to do too is reduce the dopamine levels, which is another neurotransmitter. So serotonin is one, dopamine is another. And if the dopamine levels go down, they're going to have even less ability to concentrate. Or if they have, let's say they're bipolar, and you give them, but you diagnose them with ADHD, and you give them a stimulant, you're going to make them more alive, and then that is going to raise the risk of mania. So doctors have to be very careful.
For sure, carefulness is definitely important. So thank you so much, Charlie, for the wonderful insight on this week's Issues event on healthy living. So Vancouverites, don't forget to pick up your local copy of the Georgia Straight newspaper or visit them online at www.straight.com. Thank you for watching and see you next week.
感谢收看今天的大温故事，我们下期再见。